I feel like with our three minds, it's really exciting because everyone has something to contribute and everyone has really great ideas and we can figure anything out. So it's the collaboration in-house is really fun.
Welcome to Platemark. This is Series 3, in which Ben Levy and I are interviewing colorful characters from the print ecosystem. My name is Ann Shafer, and I'm an independent curator specializing in prints and printmaking. I have had a long career in museums and print departments, and now as an independent, I have the opportunity to get people from around the print world, which has various roles and layers to it, to talk about what they do, to give us all a better understanding about what this, as I've come to call it, ecosystem is all about. And I feel that it will just make it all that much more rich for us. In this episode, we had the opportunity to interview the three master printers at Tandem Press, which is affiliated with the University of Wisconsin at Madison. Ben and I were out there for the Southern Graphics Council International Conference. Our initial goal was to interview Paula Penchenko and her husband, Russell Penchenko, which we did. And then we just took advantage and talked to as many people as we could. You're going to hear three different voices, plus Ben and me on this. I'm going to interject and identify people for you so that you can keep it clear. And also, I just need to apologize for the sound. We were limited on equipment, so we were all talking into the same microphone. And because of COVID, I think we were all just spread out a little too much. So, all right, let's get rolling.
We've been wandering around Madison trying to grab as many print ecosystem people as possible. So we've talked to James at the Chazen, and we talked to Paula and Russell. So we thought it would be awesome to sit down with the three master printers at Tandem, Joe, Jason, and Patrick.
That's Joe Freye, Jason Ruhl, and Patrick Smyczek.
To start, can you tell us your name and tell us what you do at Tandem?
I'm Joe Freye. I'm one of the master printers here. I've been here 22 years. I do basically everything, unless it's got to do with technology.
I'm Jason Ruhl. I am the technology person and shop manager and do pretty much all technique, except I'm here with two Tandem trained lithographers, so it's kind of pointless for me to do lithography.
Fair enough.
And I'm Patrick Smyczek. I'm doing lots of different types of printing, but these days a lot of screen printing. At Tandem, we do a lot of different techniques, so all of us printers are able to do most of them.
This is my Platemark co-host, Ben Levy, asking the next question.
Our initial mission was to demystify the museum and curators and that side of things. And then in this series that we're accumulating interviews for is to flesh out this ecosystem. When someone looks at a print, like all the people that are involved, from obviously artists and printers and publishers, but also dealers and collectors and museum people and arts administrators, and showing what a wonderful community this is, but also that a work of art is richer for being the product of so many different people with their own passions. And so we're interested in getting to the human side of all of those things. Maybe to start off, you could say what role art had in general, growing up, or an early experience, or when you thought that was a thing. And then for you specifically, when did you realize that printmaking was a thing?
First up is Joe Freye. He's the printer who's been there the longest.
I don't know, for me, art, I guess, was just something that I thought I was good at when I was a kid because I could draw things, which is what you think art is when you're 12. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college, so we were all supposed to go to college, and art was what I was good at, and my parents didn't know better than to say, okay, go to that. So I went to college for art, not having any idea what that was, and stumbled on some printmaking classes. And at some point, I watched a movie that had to do with Tamarind.
Joe is referring to the Tamarind Lithography Workshop, which is affiliated with the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. It trains master lithographers.
It had master printers in it, which I initially thought was cheating because I thought a person ought to print their own work.
Mm-hmm.
But then it occurred to me that that was actually a job that I was looking at, and maybe I could do that job. And so I applied to Tamarind, and here I am 30 years later.
Where did you go to undergrad?
Western Michigan University,
Okay.
an art school mecca.
Is it?
No. But it was a very good
But they had some printmaking. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
well-
was a very good printmaking program.
What was your first exposure to that?
To printmaking?
Yeah.
Well, sort of a general printmaking, and then, they had lithography specifically, they had etching, some paper making, no silk screen that I recall, so I didn't do any silk screen until a couple of years ago here.
do you have a sense of who established the department? Like a lot of schools can point to, hey, Lazansky was our guy. He started us.
I do not
No.
have any sense of who started it. The guy that was teaching lithography was Curtis Rhodes, who was a very good teacher, but nobody's ever heard of him, I don't think. Paul Roberts was the etching guy. I'm sure he's not around anymore. It was 30 years ago. If he is around, good for him. I don't think so, because he liked to sniff his chemicals.
Oh, delightful.
Yeah.
Next up is Jason Ruhl. He is one of the master printers and also the shop manager.
I guess kind of a similar thing. Like when I was a kid, art was the thing that I did. I don't know why, how it started, but I just always was into it. And went to school, undergrad, and I was going to be a high school teacher. Like that was my goal. I was from a small town, so I was like, I'll leave my small town. I'll be a high school art teacher, maybe direct theater. That'd be awesome. And then in undergrad, I got the sheet for like the S degree, and at a certain point, you stop taking art classes, like in the 300 levels, and you just start taking all teaching classes. And I was like, what? And then I got a sheet for the BFA, and I was like, oh, it's just all art and art history. I was like, what is this thing? And so I asked my printmaking instructor, I was like, what do you do with a BFA? And they were like, well, you could go to grad school and then teach at the collegiate level if you wanted to at a certain point. I was like, sweet, I'm in. And then came to UW for grad school as a painter. And about halfway through my work, switched, and printmaking made sense for my work. So I just started doing printmaking and kind of left painting in the dust.
Was that the first time you'd come across?
No, I was in undergrad.
Yeah.
You had to have a major specialization and a minor specialization. So printmaking was my minor specialization. So I'd definitely done
Gotcha.
stuff like etching, lithography. Like I broke my finger in a litho press when I was in undergrad. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, it was pretty awesome. And I didn't want to shut my plate down because I'd gone to all that work to get it going. And my instructor was like, you need to go to health services right now and take care of that. We'll shut your plate down. And I was like, okay.
Were you bleeding at all?
Yeah, a little. But I mean, I taped it up, so I thought I was good. I had
Yeah, you would have been.
had my roller out. I was good to go.
What was it about when you realized that printmaking was more suited to your work, or in that switch, what element of printmaking was it?
I was doing a lot of screen printing then, and I think some of the things that I was doing at that time, I was making larger work, but then making smaller versions of it and just leaving it in a gallery for people to take. So like that very democratic, like take one of these because there's a ton of them, and like thanks for coming to the show kind of thing. So I think that was part of it. And it sounds weird to say it out loud, but like process and the speed of the process seemed quicker to me than painting. Painting just seemed like it took forever to make one thing. And this was like, oh, I can make this and then move to this and move to this and maybe put them together. And so it made sense in that regard, I guess.
More setup, but
Yeah. And
faster
so,
product.
and it's the setup part of it interests me more. I was actually invested in learning about it, whereas painting, I never really was like, oh, I want to learn about glazing and this and that. It didn't interest me as much as a medium at a certain point.
This is master printer Patrick Smyczek.
I got into art in high school. I went to a Catholic high school in Milwaukee that happened to have a really great art program. My sophomore year, I took an art class and really enjoyed it and was spending most of my time working on homework from that class. There was a lot of students ahead of me that were applying to art schools, and finding out that that was a future seemed really interesting. When I was, I think, a senior, an artist named Tom Huck came to visit our school and show us prints. And which was like, yeah, I think he was doing something with the Milwaukee Art Museum and was just in town. And I don't know how it happened, but it was incredible for us students to see that work. And that was honestly my first exposure to prints. I was just like, this is really cool. I'm learning about multiples. It wasn't necessarily at that time that I decided, I want to see this further. I mean, we didn't have a printmaking press or anything at our high school, but I love to draw. When I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art, They had a whole building dedicated to printmaking. I took a class, and similar to when I was in high school, that's the only place I wanted to spend my time. I love the idea of making multiples so that more people could have them. You work so hard on a piece, and for there to only be one is kind of sad to me. So I like to share. One of my professors went to Tamarind and got my mind thinking about collaborative printing. And we would go on field trips up to the IFPDA in New York. And
the acronym that Patrick is referring to is IFPDA, the International Fine Print Dealers Association, which has a really large and important print fair every fall up in New York City.
That's actually where I found out about Tandem, and that Wisconsin had this really great printing press. And yeah, so I just kept pursuing it and just filling my mind with as much education and experiences as I could, and I ended up coming here, and the whole journey's been pretty incredible.
Platemark listeners will have heard Patrick say something about the Maryland Institute College of Art, which will be a keyword in their brains, because obviously I'm based in Baltimore, and my two partners in various series on Platemark have been Micah people. So Ben and Patrick were in class together. You're ahead of
2 years.
Ben?
2 years? Okay.
Yeah. So you were Abby's year, right?
I was.
Yeah.
2 years.
So, but I was shoved on that bus to IFPDA as a sophomore,
Oh.
your senior year.
Okay.
And I don't even know if I had been to New York at that point.
Yeah.
But these bus trips, they just drop you off at one place. They're like, all right, we're going to pick you up at a completely different place in about 10 hours.
Right.
And you and some of the other students were nice enough to let me tag along, because I don't know if I would have found my way back to the bus.
Wow.
But yeah, walking into those fairs as a
It's incredible.
little baby printmaker.
Yeah, I mean, and you start to learn the history of different collaborative studios, and you see the work.
Meet the people.
Yeah, you see the work, you meet the people, and it's incredible as a student.
Yeah, we say all the time that print ecosystem is full of the nicest people. Very welcoming. You can always
Yeah.
talk to them unless they're making a deal, as Paula pointed out to us this morning. She's like, now look, if I'm in a, deep into something, don't interrupt me.
But otherwise.
Otherwise,
So Joe, what was Tamarind like when you were there? What was your experience there like?
I have to be careful about.
that says it all, really.
Well, I was there in '93, which was the old space. I haven't seen the new space. My initial reaction, coming from Western Michigan University, was that it was not a very nice space. It's very messy to me and sort of dumpy, and so I was a little put off by that initially. But then, it's a great experience. I only was there for a year, so you spend a year immersed in a lot of things that you're never going to use again, frankly, because Cameron wants to be able to print through the apocalypse if it ever comes, and not rely on commercial anything. So you don't end up using a ton of those things. I got a lot out of it. I have other things to say off the record about my experience at Tamarind,
But you still love litho.
I do. I love litho. Paula identifies me all the time as a litho person, and I don't necessarily think that in my 20-something years here that's been my bread and butter. I think I've done as much of everything else as I have done litho. But yeah, as a technique, it's sort of mystified to an extent that it shouldn't be. If people think it's more difficult than it is. But,
Oh, it terrifies me.
yeah, but that's because it's badly taught in a lot of places.
Well, I never took a look. In my defense, I never took. It just, as a curator, people are like, well, haven't you ever done it? I'm like, no. I try to describe it, and I just don't quite understand how that greasy stuff sticks to the, like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a weird process because the idea of it's really simple, but, the thing that happens at Tamarind is that you live it for long enough that you understand fundamentally why it works. And that's really important for people to understand when it's not working, what to do. And, where I learned it at Western Michigan University, I learned it from a guy who was really good, but he was a painter. And he was teaching it out of the Tamarind Book of Lithography, which is the most overcomplicated manual ever written.
Oh.
And what happens is you start running into a problem and you look through the thing. And you don't think to yourself, why am I having a problem? You're just like, these are 4 different solutions that might work. And when you understand the process, you understand how stupid 1, 2, and 3 are, and you should be doing 4 or none of those. But until you understand the process, you're going through this recipe that can dig you into a deeper and deeper hole, and then you end up very frustrated.
But just hearing you describe it, it takes a year to really understand what.
It can, yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
I don't know that you couldn't be taught that in undergraduate. I just think that oftentimes people are not taught lithography in a way that's understandable. Because I think they're oftentimes taught by people that don't understand it on a fundamental level. I don't know, Patrick, if you agree with that or not, but I do think a lot of people don't know how to troubleshoot. And they, lithography, when it's working, is great. Almost anybody can do it. But when it starts to go south, you better know what's happening and why. And when you do, that's when people say, oh, you're really good at this, because it never seems to blow up. Well, it's starting to blow up all the time. You're just putting the fire out before it does what it would do to a person who doesn't understand what's happening.
Is there like a single trick that you can offer listeners as one of your best ones, best in your back pocket?
Go to Tamron. No.
For better or worse?
I mean, I could if I was standing there and somebody was having a problem. Yes, I could. But off the top of my head, no, not necessarily.
Do you make your own work?
No, I don't. And I think I'm unusual here in that I don't. About the time I got done with undergraduate, I had it with making work. And I knew very clearly I didn't want to make work. And that was kind of liberating for me. I wanted to print. I like the technical aspect of printing. I like being around people who are making art. But where I went to art school, it was a weird time. People were making, there weren't sticks and rocks sticking out of like paintings, or things weren't becoming what they weren't. And, you weren't really making art. And if you took a shower often, you weren't taken seriously. I mean, it was an odd.
Can I ask when you graduated?
Well, I went there in '87, and I was there for 6 years because I really liked being in college.
Hey, why not?
Yeah. So there was a lot about art school that I didn't like, and there was a lot about it that I did. But what I really liked was the technical sort of proficiency of printmaking after a while. And that's why Tamron got to be this attractive thing, because I was like, great, I can get paid, Seemed like it'd be easy to get a job. That didn't turn out to be true. So this is this place where they train people, and if you get that, it's the magic ticket, and you go print somewhere.
Well, that's true in most fields, right? How many people are they sending through PhD programs, so there's nothing in art history that no one's leaving jobs?
They don't tell you that on the phone.
Of course not.
Yeah, my parents didn't know any better. They were like, "That sounds fantastic. You went to college, like we said, and now you're doing this thing." Like I said, I was first generation in my family to go to college, and they just thought anything you went to college for, you weren't going to become a plumber like the other generations in my family, and they thought this art thing must be better.
Well, yeah, college is college, right?
I just ended up making things with my hands like the rest of my family, so it's great. It's blue collar work, and I love it.
Between Tamron and Tandem, how did
I get from one to the other?
Yeah.
Well, I got out of Tamron and worked in a warehouse for a little while just for something to do, because I was a little disillusioned with the fact that I didn't get into the second year of Tamron. And then my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, started asking about, where was this going? And got me to start sending out resumes, which I just blindly sent out 100 resumes to every shop I could find, minus LA and New York, because I was terrified of those places, never having been anywhere. Now I wish I'd spent a little time in New York, but at the time that seemed terrifying. So I ended up getting offered a job from Joe Freye in Arizona, and they were doing a contract thing, which was, I think, 12 runs, addition of 300 by hand, and would I move to Arizona potentially for 3 or 4 months worth of work, and I did. And I worked there for 5 years, and decided to move back to the Midwest. About that time, Tandem was looking for somebody, and they called me and asked me if I'd be interested in applying. I hope he was.
We should go talk to Joe. Hello, Joe.
Yeah. Joe was a great guy to start out working for, because you understand exactly how hard and fast you can work. He expects a certain amount of things to get done in a day.
I feel like your first boss, it can be so make or break.
Yeah.
Break your spirit or lift you up or whatever.
He did from time to time.
You probably needed that.
I might have broken his too. I don't know.
But you guys must act as that for people who are here in school and interning, or you guys have students helping you out, right?
Yeah, but we're not treating them that way. I mean,
Nice. Well done.
yeah, well, that's neither good or bad. I have nothing but good things to say. We had our moments, but it was a great experience. We made a lot of good things together. This is a little bit different place, a little more laid back. And, you know, quite a lot different kind of work.
We were talking to Paula this morning, and just obviously she's been here for quite a while. Just to imagine keeping the ship going in the same direction and making it successful. And
At this point, some people were in the room next door to us talking loudly, which of course is allowed, but it totally muddled up the recording. I was asking them to tell us about favorite projects that they had worked on. Here's Jason Ruhl.
When Joe and I worked on the dying cottonwoods, like that whole process is a really convoluted, long process, but I love that. Or like Derek Adams, the self-portrait. Or Joe and I driving back from Connecticut, where we had just been at Bob Cottingham's studio, having him sign prints and talking about how we were going to make a print that we talked about with Bob. Basically like, oh, what did we get ourselves into? And how are we going to actually make this fucking thing? And like spending that car ride back and forth, bouncing ideas up into saying, okay, that's got to be a laser engraver that we do the key block with, but let's do everything else carved by hand because it's not necessary to use the. So like,
is that the typewriter that's downstairs?
Yeah, that's Corona. And so I just have a lot of like the Michelin Thomas 1977, like the Vandercook suite with Suzanne. I do have so many projects that it's one of those things and kind of maybe able to do what Patrick said, but just that this is what I do for a living blows my mind every once in a while. I mean, it's a job, so occasionally you're just like, but like yesterday when that group of students was here to work with young people who like to make things, and they had this chance to pull this 10-foot by 4-foot print. That was just as awesome as any of the collaborations we've done because it was like the vibe, the whole process of
it was
it.
organic somehow.
Yeah, and it did. It just like it started as a completely different thing, steamroller outside, and the weather was terrible, and we moved in inside, and we pulled one print, and it looked like garbage, like it wasn't a good impression. But we're like, okay, push this, change this, do that, and that's the thing is like Allison Starr. I mean, I can look around this room and see prints and be like, this happened. It was cool. It was awesome. So I don't know. I guess all of it.
All of it. We were here for the second pull of Enough yesterday, and I wasn't really sure what was going on in the first place. I didn't know it was a group from Ohio University, and then I saw you on the press. I was like, oh well, either Jason's taking over, or they really needed help, or whatever. But it was so fun to watch you guys all. It was like you're holding a flag on a football field and lowering the fabric. It was fun. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Patrick and Joe about this today, where it was like it was eerily quiet when we did that. Like
yes.
We were putting and like everyone was worried that if they talked, they would mess it up, and it's interesting when you're in that kind of situation because this is something that we do every day, but you don't have people staring at you while you do it. So that adds oh no, we really got to hit it. Like you got to make sure it works. This thing that you do constantly that just works and works and works, you get two sets of eyes on you and it goes south right away.
But and also the quieting down of the room as the fabric was getting lowered. It felt like a reverence thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that they were, fangirling, boying at you guys as the master printers, but the whole process and the power print and the whole 9 yards. It was just great.
No, yeah, it was really.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean that's the thing. That's my job. That's pretty awesome. I got to
hit yourself in the morning.
No, I mean I do There are a lot of times that I am as a kid that was really into making things way back when, and had a lot of people telling me you should not go into the arts. You should get you're somewhat intelligent. You should, you could do other things. And I was just like, I'm not into that stuff. This is the one thing that I was always into, not printmaking specifically, but making things.
Well, this assumption that being in our world means you don't have to be smart.
Well, I mean,
right?
So, yeah, but I got that a lot, this idea of so
it's just a different kind of thinking.
Completely different.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time on the podcast. It's a different kind of brain.
Yeah. Some people either get what art school is, but a lot of people think you just did drugs and had sex for 4 years and are unemployable. So figuring out all of those skills that you develop, all the problem solving, all the abstract thinking, critical thinking, and being aware of your surroundings and anticipating needs and all those things that are just part and parcel with working in a shop are super important and viable skills for any number of fields, right?
It's people like you guys that are going to solve climate change. Like, it's not going to take the wonk sitting behind their desk running numbers. You have to think. We haven't fixed it yet.
I think we're helping here.
No, I know. You get what I mean.
But no, I think that's the thing is because Joe and I have obviously worked together a lot longer than the three of us have worked together. But when I was brought in as a full-time person, it was because I could maybe bridge this gap of technology and old school. And Joe and I would have conversations where he basically would be like, can you make that machine do this? And I'd be like, yeah, for sure. And we would talk it through, and that problem solving, we're not just going to use it because it's fancy or this. It's like, it makes sense logically to use this because it will speed this part of the process up and this and that. So I think that's is like that problem solving. Patrick and I have been working together a lot on Derek Adams stuff and Jeffrey Gibson stuff. And some of it's archival inkjet that then screen print's going over, but you've got two different techniques that have different types of registration. And this is happening and figuring out how to get through that. So I can see why you would say that like someone who is thinking outside the box will perhaps help us with that problem.
And that's all printmaking. It's just problem solving.
Exactly.
And that's why it's a cool job after this many years.
Mm-hmm.
It's never the same thing. It's based on the same bag of tricks, but I don't think there's been hardly any projects that I've done where I didn't have to learn something new. Or some artist didn't come and say, can you do this? And we all smile and go, mm-hmm. And then they go to lunch and we're like, well, what are we going to do now? You got an idea?
Yeah, I mean, that's like the first project that I worked on in the studio was Sam Gilliam. Before the visit, it was like, he's probably not going to do that much like technology, use digital and everything. Because it's Sam Gilliam. And then within 2 minutes, they were like, can we feed wood veneer through this Epson printer? And I was like, in my head, I was like, that's not going to be good. But I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I feel like we don't say that we can't do anything. Yep. We always say that we can, and then we go hide for like 25 minutes. I'm like, all right, what are we going to do? Like, we can do it, but what are we going to do?
I'm pretty sure it's possible.
Yeah,
so.
like, no, it's not. Yeah, but yeah,
that's what I mean. I mean, 25-something years later, that's still the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not boring.
Right.
It'd be really boring. It's like, yep, another lithograph. For me, it would be. I know there are shops that they do their one thing and they're excellent at it. And that's great. And I'm glad they're in the world. But I like the idea that we've just got all this. It's like a candy store down there. We're like, well, we could do some silk screen and then we'll throw this on it. And,
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea what project has the most different layers / techniques / passes through? Like,
no, those are different projects.
Yeah, I would say Micklin is technically.
He's got most techniques, probably.
But Ben Edwards is probably the most.
Probably the most runs. Colors. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How many runs, colors was that?
140 or
was that all?
something. Colors. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas like,
Yeah.
That was a quick one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, how long does that take?
Longer than it should. I don't remember. That was my project, so I feel like it was half a year of my time or something like that.
Are there set deadlines? Well, probably you have to get it done by the fair in the fall or something like that. But
Typically,
Is
it's
it
not.
as you can get it done.
It takes as long as it takes.
Right.
It takes as long as it takes, unless it's occasionally we'll do a print club print for some organization, and then it's got to be done. The other deadline is oftentimes we'll send things to fairs that are just RTPs, and the edition, not only isn't started, but it might be backed up by 3 or 4 projects. Well, meanwhile, people at the fairs, if they really want that, and we sell a bunch of them, then there's this weird internal pressure where they're like, well, we're not trying to pressure you, but we got these people calling. When do you think? It doesn't happen as much anymore, but I can remember years ago when we had a GBFAF run that were like 5 or 6 prints that just sold like hotcakes. And then those people, you'd think it's like groceries, it's like it's going to go bad. These people are calling like, can I have it now? And you're like, well, why?
Well, once you've decided, you're like,
well, yeah, I get it, but it just felt funny to me. I'm like, it's going to be fine. It's not spoiling over here, but.
That happened to me waiting for a print that Pace was making of Wangechi Mutu. And I would call every 6 months and say, hey, how's it going?
6 months is reasonable. These people were calling a lot more often than
It took
that.
like 3 years for them to get that puppy together.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
yeah, we did the Armory show recently, and there was Derek Adams working it that was RTP, but not. And they were very upfront, like, this is 4 months out, 6 months out, give or take. We'll take a certain percentage. We won't take the entire payment. Like you're saying, that has been a little bit more incorporated into everything. And I think it does take the pressure off of both sides of the business. Like, so we're not freaking out in the studio like, oh, we got to get this done because we're going to lose sales. And the clients aren't mad at the curators because they're like, you told me it would be ready. So.
Yeah, but that was years ago that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The crew that we are now, I think, is much better about being realistic. Not only realistic, but, just tighter about, this is about how long it's going to take. And we're right about that. And then they can communicate that to people so that they don't go to the fair and say, oh, yeah, I think it'll be ready in 2 months because they're making that up. We have a lot of meetings. These things come up. So everybody tends to be on the same page.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. There's still people that, they have to have it now. And it's great that they want it that badly, by the way.
Once you start acquiring prints, it's like a disease. You're just like, you gotta feed the beast,
Don't tell people that.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Good disease.
it is, no, it's good. Like, you just have to just want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so Jason, you were talking about you were brought on with technology in mind. But what was that process like? Where were you right before? And
After grad school, I moved to Minnesota for a year and taught as an adjunct. Then I moved to Chicago and opened a gallery in the apartment that I lived in with a friend from grad school because we thought that was a good idea. It actually was great. I mean, but like barely anyone ever came in. We were way too far on the south side for anyone to want to. I mean, we weren't at all, but that's what people like give as an excuse. We were right off a train stop. And then my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, was back in Minnesota and I was in Chicago, and it was like, we should live in the same town. And I was like, I do not want to live where you're at. And she was like, I don't want to live in Chicago. So I was like, well, what about Madison? It's halfway geographically between both of us, and it's a nice little town. And I started working in a frame shop part-time because I had frame experience from grad school. And that was when somebody came in and needed Photoshop help. And they were like,
That Tandem's frame shop.
yeah, a Tandem frame shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, we had a frame shop. Because Judy Pfaff does a lot of designing over frames. That was my real introduction into the magnitude of print when it's this massive. I was working on Judy Pfaff stuff right away, so it was just like, it's pretty mind-blowing in that sense. But somebody came in and they had some Photoshop thing, and the printers at the time were not really versed in it at all. And so they were like, I think Jason in the back might know how to do some of this stuff. And because I had taken a class in grad school that was like trying to be this hybrid of moving technology into printmaking. So I started helping out more and more with that. And then Paula was like, I think we should have a printer that can do both these things. So they did a search. I luckily got the job. At first, my role was much more of the digital side of things, but I think it evolved pretty quickly into that I was helping out in other, like I was doing projects on the Vandercook and like just bounce around the shop a lot more. At first, and maybe it was just because of the time, it seemed like we were going to do more just output, like digital output. But I think we realized internally that we weren't necessarily interested in it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think we just saw it as another thing. Most of the prints we work on have a hybrid of technique. And I think we just were like, this is another thing to put in the bag of tricks. Use it when it's smart. Don't use it just cause. And then that's kind of how it. And then I guess when we moved to this space, then I took over as shop manager. And that's where we're at now.
What year was that?
2013.
I think this question doesn't have an answer because I would question the question, but when the notion of digital and printmaking integrating, or what would you wish that conversation would be like? Because I feel like there's lots of times strong opinions that aren't actually on either side of a single conversation, right? Mm-hmm. How would you wish that conversation was framed?
I think it has gotten better, but every time there's a new media that's developed, it becomes the like, oh, it's easy. It's
exactly the sound that was going through my mind.
Yeah, it's like people always rip on screen printing. It's the easiest, lamest part of printmaking. And it's not. Like, there are amazing screen prints, but they treat it like it's this garbage medium. And I think with digital, it's the newest kid on the block. And it has it's this idea that you just hit a button and it does everything. Like, there's no thought that goes into it. Someone still has to construct that image. Someone has to know how to get the image out of the box. All of these things that go in it, but it's easily written off because most people, and in a weird way, printmaking itself. It's just when they hear print, it's Apple P.
Right.
It just makes it lesser than because you already have this idea about it.
Well, there's obviously a false hierarchy about all of them, but also I don't mind if there's digital integrated in it, but if I see something that says archival pigment print, I'm like, yeah, gotta go. Because I want to see a little bit of the hand of, you guys or the artist or just something that.
Well, there's no warmth in the process. That's the thing. Like, you're exactly right about the back end of digital. There's a lot that goes into that. And I watch that in awe because I can't do any of it. I'm always asking you, like, can't you just tell the thing to do the thing? And you're like, it's harder than that.
Photoshop.
So that part I think is really, really cool. But then it starts spitting out this really cold machine, and it can be really seductive and beautiful. But we all still think prints are cool. And part of that is the hand that's in it. I mean, there's this warmth. There's the idea that if I print a project, it's going to look a little bit different than if Patrick prints it. Particularly if I collaborate with an artist and see that project all the way through, you probably would have come at it from a slightly different angle. I don't think anybody's ever run that experiment, but it would be interesting to see, okay, what would it look like if you did it versus what I would have done. Whether it's true or not, I hang on to the idea that it's different because I made it. And I think that's a really magical thing, personally.
True, and in a lot of ways, you're translating this idea given to you by the artist, and the way your mind translates it, like, this is the color that I want, and you're physically mixing that ink. You're not following some recipe on a box or putting the formula into some software or something. You're using your experience and creating this thing by hand. And everyone's mind and hand works differently. That's part of the beauty of printmaking, because there is so much control by the person.
Yeah, and every once in a while, when you work with somebody long enough, they'll mix a color and you'll know that what they really want isn't that color that you just mixed together, and they go away and you're like, God damn it, I'm adding some trans in there because I know it's not going to work this way. And then they're going to print it and they're like, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Eyebrow colors is just, I mean, that to me is the variable that can go so wrong, or out of alignment with what the artist is interested in. Like, you mixing all those colors for Jeffrey's, I mean, by hand, by eye.
Yeah, I think part of it is working with an artist over the years. In those first collaborations, you really get a great sense of what direction they want to go. As your collaboration evolves over time, you can get there a lot faster. And every artist works differently, but it's up to you to just being able to get them what they want and not being like, well, I think it should be this color. That doesn't matter. But sometimes it does, in the sense of like, well, how's this going to turn out how they want it? Because some artists have printmaking experience and they can maybe try to get a little too involved as far as the making of something, as far as, oh, I want you to mix this color like this to do this thing. And you're like, well, it's not going to quite be translucent the way you want it if I do it like that. So like Joe was saying, they wander off and then you do what, and ultimately give them what they want. And, that's really an important thing.
And you can do that easier when you've got a relationship.
Yeah. You're making someone's art with them, and there's a lot of trust that needs to happen in order for that to be successful.
In some shops, one of you would have a singular relationship with the artist. Do you each have your own artists? Like Suzanne comes to you, Patrick? Or
She doesn't come to me.
or whoever it is. Like when Judy Fab shows up on Monday, who's she going to talk to first? No, besides Paula.
It doesn't work that way here.
Okay.
I don't, unless somebody else feels different.
No, we meet as a group with the artist when they come in. Depending on the visit, we try to have something on the wall ready to talk about. It's always really awkward when, especially because we have students that work here, so sometimes you walk into a shop with 6 to 10 people and everyone's staring at the artist like, well, now what? But I think as the printers, we're right there with them. And with Judy, I feel like what's going to happen is Judy has already sent like a bunch of stuff that she's prepped. Judy will walk in the door when she's ready and say, ink that up in this, blah, 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 blah. And one of us will take a block, one of us will do this, and it'll just go.
Eventually we'll settle into, you might be working on a project, but that'll happen organically.
Yeah.
So like, Jason, this is the kind of thing you're good at.
Yeah. We tend to obviously be working on more than one image at a time. So one of us usually takes one thing each Or if it's something that requires two people, they'll bounce to that and the other person will go to this. But it is usually really pretty organic.
Yeah, unless it's like Bob Cottingham wants to do a stone litho. That's pretty much doing it. Although Patrick's here now. But before Patrick was here, Bruce, if Bob wanted to do that, or if he wanted to do any litho, it just tended to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And we've worked together for 20 years, and that's fantastic. If he wanted to do something on Vandercook, that tended to be you, because we love the Vandercook.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not normal. Normally the artist just walks in and it's all of us are available. We divide that up, sometimes without really speaking about it amongst ourselves.
It feels beautifully unusual to me. Am I wrong?
Well, and just other folks that we've talked to and in my own experience, obviously that's the result of you all doing the beautiful silent ballet, in the shop. And,
The Pit Crew Ballet.
So I can it's very understandable that, you all know each other so well as that artist relationship to know where,
Yeah, we all know each other really well and we all like each other a whole lot. And Jason doesn't treat this like I'm the studio manager and you will do this.
He might be thinking it, but
I hope it's because he doesn't have to do that.
Right.
But, yeah, we have. We've known each other for a long time. We trust each other. We know what everybody's good at.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you, with an artist, say not one that you have an existing relationship, how do you build that trust?
For me, I've always approached it to and Patrick kind of talked about, so you give them what they want. When a person first comes in, the first time Jim Dine came in, I'm like, it's Jim Dine, oh my God. But I'm like, I'm not trying to high five Jim Dine or like, hey, can I get a selfie? I'm just like, I'm going to put my nose down and do work and show Jim Dine that we can give Jim Dine what Jim Dine wants. I'll just try to say Jim Dine one more time.
He'll probably listen.
But for me, you try to establish that trust right away. You show them that you're thoughtful, that you are there for them to make their work. Like Patrick said, there's a lot of, I can't imagine as a person going into a space with my imagery and having other people put their hands on it and having that trust. We have a reputation, obviously, but so does the artist. And I think that to me, that's where you start the relationship. And then the more they come back or the more you work with them, then it does really become how we are as a group, where we're very friendly and it is a cool experience. Like when Alison Sarr comes back, Alison is one of the nicest human beings on this planet. And the energy and the vibe is so cool and can be real chill, but can swing this way if a project isn't working. It is just this continual collaborative building of a relationship.
Yeah, I think when an artist sees how committed you are and how much you want this to be successful, they really respond to it. Like staying late to make this color work or get in early to do some troubleshooting. They don't miss that. And they see for us, it's more than a job. We're really passionate about the work that we do. And that really goes a long way, I think.
Jim Dine would certainly appreciate the work ethic part. He works harder than anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weirdly easy, that part that you're talking about, though, is first time you're working with somebody. I can't think of too many examples where it's been like phone teeth, and you would think that it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it tends to last more than a couple hours before you feel like you're clicking on some level, some people it takes longer to really get that trust made. But, Jason's right. If you just are competent, they can see that you're competent and you're serious and you're asking the right questions and you're listening when you should.
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of falls into place, I think.
Well, no, an artist who is interested in making prints with a shop like Tandem is already predisposed to be like, yeah, I'm going to go meet the printer guy. Like, let's talk through the thing. Like, they're already predisposed to the process, right?
And they've usually either heard about it from somebody else and, or probably have heard of Tandem from somebody else. And it's not usually like they're walking in here and they don't have any idea what's going to happen. Luckily.
And it's a big honor. And obviously you all are incredibly humble, and that's what makes you good at what you do, putting that ego to the side. But on the outside, talking to artists, they're like, oh yeah, I got to do this thing. Like,
there.
And which is a beautifully reciprocal thing, right?
Yeah. As it should be.
Yeah.
This is just me, but like when you say ego, I definitely have an ego, and that's why I'm like, we're going to do the best thing that we can possibly make. So there is that edge to it where it is a room full of a lot of ego. And so that's the other part of it to wade through. But I think that we all realize that you check a certain part of that ego at the door. You're never going to bring a ton of attitude to someone because, like, that's never going to accomplish anything, obviously. But
there's a different ego when it's not your work. You know?
Yeah.
You're really just trying to pull off somebody else's work. That's easier to leave your ego out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, but I don't make my own work at all, so maybe that's just is easy for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and it takes a certain amount of confidence and trust in yourself to be able to pull off the things that we do here. Sometimes, I mean, the artist is watching and you're just like, doing my best. Right.
That's the part about prints and printmaking that I love so much is we talk about it all the time, the collaborative part. Like, it's all, all boats are rising because we're all doing the best thing we can to make the thing work.
When I look at a project, like, it's a lot of times pretty damn obvious that couldn't exist if not for all of these pieces working properly together. You know, when you see the result of a collaborative process, I always think of it, maybe if this rings a bell to you, maybe we got it from the same place, but that's kind of a distillation of an artist because so many of those variables are changing that you can see really clearly which variables have maintained. That's how I pick apart a work of art when I'm looking at it. That's the result of a collaborative process. Okay, this variable is true for this artist no matter what medium, no matter what condition, and then other things come and go. It's wonderful to see that, and then to look at a shop, regardless of artist, this variable is remains. And I mean, for you all, that combination of processing and on the technical level, that proficiency, you get a sense of that vibe, that character of a shop by looking around a room. You know, your presence is felt, but it's not loud.
Do you guys ever engage the artists in discussions about the meaning, the content, beyond the technical problem solving?
Oh, yeah. When they bring it up, we very seldom say, well, what's this about?
Just out of curiosity.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean,
just out of curiosity.
You're here all day for...
What's the there?
You're talking the whole time, so
Yeah.
that tends to come up.
Yeah.
I think that thing you're talking about, though, with an artist sort of thing coming through, is it's one of the things that Tandem's good at is, we do all these techniques because there are artists that wouldn't work well in lithography, for instance. So we don't do lithography with those artists. We're able to do it silkscreen, or we can do etching or relief or any number of things. So we're not forcing a medium on an artist for who doesn't.
Yeah, that flexibility, right?
Yeah.
And plus the technical room you have now with all those wonderful machines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really lucky to have gotten that gift because when we were using a laser, we were going to a place in town that we rented their equipment and they were great to work with, but you don't have to sit at that place for 6 hours and watch the thing go back and forth because the fire started, someone's going to be there to stop it. Whereas now, you can hit start and walk away and do something else in the shop. And the scanner helps us with the website because there's a zoom in feature. And so now people can really see the detail in the work. And
That's so helpful.
yeah, to be able to do things in-house just helps during a visit.
Do you guys often go to fairs? Do you like going to fairs? Do you jump at the chance to? Suspect you don't.
I love
Joe.
the fairs.
Yeah?
I
And
don't.
stand in the booth?
I do not work in the booth. I would be willing to, but I don't know that I'd be very good at it. Frankly, I mean, when I was at Segura and we didn't have a salesperson for quite a while. And so when somebody would come in, I couldn't sell them art. If they wanted to buy something, I could talk them out of it. Because I couldn't say those numbers with a straight face. I was like, $3,000. In the back of my mind, I'm like, well, that's a car for me. Like, really? So no, I'm not good in the booth, and I'm really glad that we have people that are. But I like to go to fairs, and I like to go do artist visits during the fair. I like to walk around the fair and look at art and think about who I might work with.
Do you bring artists to the table? Do you say, I saw this guy, I did a visit with so-and-so, and
we've brought artists to the table just whose work we've seen cold at fairs.
Yeah.
And, we've gone to fairs with the express purpose of doing visits with artists we're already working with. Trying to think, Mishka, I think, did a studio visit with Derek the first time because she was in New York. And so, those visits happen. Because I'm not in the booth, I've never gone and met somebody that we haven't worked with. But, doing studio visits, is a really good thing to do. And, it works out to go with the team and do those during the fair.
multiple people go on the visit?
Well, occasionally.
Yeah.
Patrick and I did that in New York. What, pre-pandemic was it?
That was 2019 in the fall.
So,
Yeah, pre-pandemic.
yeah, just.
just.
Yeah, we're hoping to do more of that. There's been some talk of everybody going to Miami just because there's such a wealth of stuff going on all at one time. It tends to be that the salespeople don't get to have. I mean, Jason works the fairs. Patrick would be fantastic working fairs. I don't know
Thanks, Joe.
have. Well, you're a very people person.
You should come to Baltimore.
I would love to. I miss Baltimore.
Yeah, talk to Sona. She's coming. Mission's coming.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I think right now, leading up to our shows in the fall, my best place right now is in the studio.
Oh,
Yeah.
you gotta crank out some things.
We're gonna have a lot of things coming up.
Yeah?
Really exciting projects, and
Anything you can talk about?
I don't think so at this point,
Okay.
actually. But I'd
Awesome.
say the Armory Show and the IFPD are gonna be really exciting.
Great.
So,
That's exciting.
but like everything we do here, it's all handmade and it's very time consuming. There you go.
Maybe by the time the fair comes, we can go and visit.
That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah.
When you're doing before the artist is coming here, you're going with them. Are there certain things you're looking at being in their space? Are there things that you're starting to pre-problem solve, looking at their space or how they make their work or anything like that?
Judging if they have brains that can handle printmaking.
I mean,
usually already made some prints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
But we tend to, if possible, get a couple images and sometimes we'll put them on the wall and just live with them for a while and let it bounce around in our heads. Like, what do you think? What do you think on this? And a lot of times I feel like we all go to the same place pretty quickly, but sometimes it is like, oh, I didn't think about that. Maybe we should do it that way. And during COVID, doing Zoom things with people and being able to see in their studio was actually great because then it put you in that space. Now, obviously, it's not as good as in person, but I think you tend to, as soon as you start looking at someone's work in your brain, how would you do this?
We don't use studio visits specifically to talk about projects.
Yeah.
It's a general studio visit just to say hi and, stay connected and look at the work. And one piece that's an exception to that, I guess, is the first party guest that we did with Derek because he was working on those prints at the time and we started talking about, this could be a really good print and, the light bulb went off for him.
There's a
We
series
didn't
of
stand there
paintings,
thinking,
yeah.
real technically about we sort of stood there thinking, it's awesome, we're going to make this party guest, it's going to be cool because I'm a piece, but we didn't talk shop.
Yeah, parts of his paintings are on fabric and there's different collage elements and stuff. And right when he agreed in the moment or the moments after, and just like the way my mind works, I was just thinking through, okay, how would we potentially build this? And we had the idea to print on book cloth and things like that. Like, well, it's not something that we've necessarily done before, but that would really add a lot to this print. Through our conversations, just evolved, and I feel like with our three minds, it's really exciting because everyone has something to contribute, and everyone has really great ideas, and we can figure anything out. So it's the collaboration in-house is really fun.
Just listening to you guys talk about problem solving just popped in my brain. You could just slide in the word creativity in there for problem solving because that's literally what it is. Your brains are always going and thinking creatively about how to solve. It's all wrapped up together. So if any of our listeners ever thought these guys are just sticking a piece of paper on a thing and printing, no.
That's called additioning.
That
That's
is
not collaborating.
Yeah, that is a different.
Yeah, there is a moment, of course, but yeah, there's so much more to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody have anything they want to say that we haven't covered?
Come to Tandem, support your print studios, and go to fairs and ask questions and visit. So
Yeah.
okay.
No, sure, of course. Of course.
I think what Patrick said is beautiful, and that's why he'd be really good in a booth because he just did this very thoughtful thing, very right off the top of his head.
With Patrick's fine words and Jason's compliment, that was the end of our talk with the three master printers from Tandem Press at Madison. Thank you so much for joining us for Platemark Series 3. We're going to be interviewing all sorts of people. I hope you will tune in for the next round. My name is Ann Shafer. I really appreciate your joining us. I always need to thank people who helped me get this thing going. First, I need to thank Ben Levy for being my co-pilot. And also a thank you, of course, to Jason, Joe, and Patrick for being wonderful interviewees. I need to also thank Michael Diamond for the use of his original music. And I think that's it. We'll see you next time.